All right, so the next concept that we need to talk about is the idea of form. So you might be familiar with like song form, for example, verse, chorus, bridge, chorus, something like that. Or there are other kinds of musical forms like we have an A section and then a B section and a C section, etc. In Javanese Gamelan, form is referred to as bentuk. So there are various different kinds of bentuk, and these are determined by the patterns of the colotomic instruments. In other words, what order do the instruments ketuk, kempiang, kempul, kenong, and gong all play in? So what is the alternation of those instruments, and how long is each cycle? So these different kinds of forms have different names. The most basic ones, the ones that we're going to be working on in this introductory class, include lancaran, ladrang, and ketawang. So again, the overall outline as far as how these colotomic instruments work is listed here for lancaran, ladrang, and ketawang. But don't worry too much about memorizing this. In a moment here, we're going to come back and listen to that recording, to another recording of Wilujeng, this time with the colotomic instruments added in, so we can get a sense as to where we are in the cycle. In particular, I want us to focus on the location of the large gong. Also, one thing you'll see here at the bottom of this slide is that the names of pieces actually give a lot of information about the piece. So the first part of any name is the bentuk, or the form, and that tells you how long the cycle is, what the kendang drum is playing, and what patterns are going to be played by all of these colotomic instruments. So for example, a piece might be named like this. It begins with lancaran. After the form, after the bentuk, we have the title of the piece, in this case, Manyar Sewu. Following that, we have the laras, is this slendro or pelok, in this case, slendro, and then the patet, or mode, which is manyuro. So the full name of this piece is actually Lancaran Manyar Sewu Slendro Manyuro. So next, I'd like to go back and listen again to Wilujeng, and this time we're going to try and follow along with the colotomic instruments, and I'm going to kind of guide you through that. And the full title of this piece would be Ladrang Wilujeng Slendro Manyuro. So let's take a look. Okay, so now we're going to look at the same piece, but instead of following along with the balungan, we're going to add in the colotomic instruments and try and follow along with that part. So if you look at this notation, the symbols for the colotomic instruments are all listed on the right-hand side. So this symbol we have kempiang, this symbol we have ketuk, this symbol we have kenong, this is kempul, and this is gong. For each of these symbols, for each of these names, we're going to just say the second syllable, just like we did with the numbers. So it's going to become piang, tok, nong, pul, and gong. Now, one thing you'll notice is that for the ketuk, if you're listening closely to that instrument, he plays it with a bouncing stroke. So not just tok, but instead tok, 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 something like that. And for the kenong, if you're listening closely, the kenong player won't play exactly on the beat, but he plays a little bit delayed. Okay, so let's try it out and see if we can follow along. Piang, tuk, 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 tuk. Piang, rest. Piang, tuk, 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 tuk. Piang, dong. Piang, tuk, Okay, so was everybody able to follow along with that? I hope so, but if not, no worries. The most important thing is that we can hear that large gong at the end of each cycle. So if we ever get lost in a piece, that large gong becomes our kind of marker point. That lets us know exactly where we are. Okay, the next concept that I wanted to get into was the rhythmic concept of gamelan. So this is the main kind of rhythmic concept that we need to deal with is called irama. So irama refers to the relative speed of the elaborating instruments to the balungan, or the written part, that skeletal melody that we talked about. So what I mean by that is that if we have a fast balungan, we have a fast skeletal melody, the elaborating instruments don't have a lot of space in between those balungan notes to fill in extra parts. But when the irama changes, it will slow down that skeletal melody. Even though they're playing the exact same written melody, it will stretch out. All of the notes will be farther apart when they're playing it slower. And in that empty space between the balungan notes, the elaborating instruments can then actually fill in. And at this point, we have changed from one irama to the next. So, if we have a really fast balungan, the flowering instruments aren't doing that much. Oftentimes, if it's too fast, they won't even play because you aren't going to hear them. So the fastest irama that we have is called irama lancar. Moving a little bit slower, usually it means 2 elaborating notes. For every balungan note, we have irama tanggung. The next level down, we have irama dados. Following that, we have irama willet. And following that, we have irama rangkap. So I'm going to play a short example now, which will show you what an irama transition might sound like from dados to willet. So if this isn't completely clear at first, don't worry, we're going to deal with a few different examples to show exactly how this works, but this is kind of the last important concept that we need to know in terms of how to follow along with the balungan for any given piece. We have to make sure to stay on top of these tempo transitions because those are really the moments where it becomes kind of hard to follow sometimes. So let's take a listen to this 1 minute sample, which is going to, you'll hear a tempo transition somewhere around the middle of this listening example. Clap along with the balungan here. I hope you were able to hear that, and if you can't quite yet, don't worry. By the time we get through a few more examples, you'll be able to hear what I mean. As that balungan is stretching out, these other instruments start filling in, and we get more out of the texture.